A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. Brothers and sisters, I declare and testify in the Lord that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their minds. That is not how you learned Christ, assuming that you have heard of him and were taught in him, as truth is in Jesus, that you should put away the old self of your former way of life, corrupted through deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self, created in God's way in righteousness and holiness of truth. The word of the Lord.
Our second reading for this Sunday comes from the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. We have been reflecting on a new and fresh spiritual way of thinking, and I got that phrase from the second reading. In the first reading, we saw how the Israelites somehow forgot the evil of slavery in Egypt and the wonderful thing that God has done for them by liberating them through Moses, just because they got hungry in the desert. Now, in the second reading, St. Paul describes the pagans, those who do not recognize God, as people with empty minds. Oh, their minds are empty. There's nothing there. But for those who have already believed in Christ, their minds must be filled with Christ. You have learned Christ, according to St. Paul. Now, in contrast to people who have not yet learned Christ, what is this emptiness of mind? Well, according to St. Paul, their minds are filled with illusions, filled with untruth, also filled with desire. When you say desire, these are the allurements of the flesh, of the world. Imagine a mind that looks at reality from half-truths, non-truths, lies, illusions, and selfish desires. What will happen to this person? What will happen to this person's choices, decisions, and actions? But St. Paul reminds the Ephesians, as he reminds all of us, your minds are no longer empty. You have learned Christ. So your minds have been renewed already by Christ. In Christ, we have acquired a new way of thinking, a new way of viewing reality, and it is spiritual. And don't think that this is out of this world. No. The more our minds are filled with Christ, and the more He influences our way of thinking, according to St. Paul, your mind will live in truth. And this truth will bear fruit in justice and peace. Isn't this our dream? A world where peace, born out of justice, will reign? But how will that happen? Only if our minds acquire a new perspective based on truth. And that is the truth of Jesus Christ. That's why St. Paul tells us to, again, abandon the old way of life and cling to the new person that we have acquired in Christ. That was the basic problem of the Israelites. They kept looking back to the old life, the old person, not being able to let go in order to embrace the newness that God offers. So, dear brothers and sisters, what is happening to your mind? Is it empty or is it filled with Christ?